Project delays, redevelopment, society formation, or creating gift deeds. If you have any legal query regarding property, you've tuned into the right show. Hello and welcome. You're watching Property Hotline with me, Kavita Krishnan, on Magic Bricks Now. Today we are answering legal queries related to real estate. Our special guest is Anshuman Jagtap. He's an associate partner at Haryani & Co. Anshuman, welcome to the show. And let's get started. We have a question that's come in on our website first. Harish Duseha has written in. Now, he says that he booked a flat in Goregaon, Mumbai in 2010. He got it registered in 2011. It's now ready for possession. He wants to know what is the list of documents he must have while taking possession of the under construction property.
See, actually, the question is a little odd because he's saying that the building is ready, but still he says that it is under construction. So I'm assuming that the property is ready and fit for occupation. And therefore, first thing that you need to now check is whether there is an OC to the building or not. Because if it is under construction, at the same time he's offering possession, it should not happen that you are taking possession of the property without OC being in place. But if the OC is in place, so you can also ask for the plans along with the OC that are generally there. And along with that, what you need to take is the full payment receipt, because I'm sure against the possession, you will be asked for the balance payment outstanding in terms of the agreement. So those will, the payment has to be made by you and you have to take a full payment receipt. Simultaneously, you should also take a possession receipt saying that you have been now put in possession of the property. Also, you be careful in respect of the amenities. So many times what happens, flats do come with amenities and fittings. And you ensure that whatever has been agreed to you under the agreement have been provided to you or not, to your satisfaction. So in spite, before the possession is being offered, you do an inspection of your flat, be satisfied that everything is in order, everything is working properly, and sure, then you can step in and get possession of your property.
So that's a checklist of documents that you need to get from the developer before you take possession of the property. And also, like Anshuman said, do ensure that you go and you do a thorough inspection of the flat before you sign on the dotted line saying that, yes, I have taken possession of the property. Anshuman, very quickly before we move on, now possession brings with it certain other responsibilities. Eventually, the society has to be conveyed, the society has to be formed first, land has to be conveyed to the society. So very quickly, if you could take us through those as well. Once you get possession, then what is the timeline that you should look at within which a society has to be formed? What is the timeline within which land needs to be conveyed to the society?
See, as per the prevailing laws, within 1/3 of the flats being sold, society is expected to be formed. So as soon as the people have come in, but in practice it is difficult because until and unless the full payment is not done, builder would not want to form a society. So ordinarily, immediately after the possession, 1/3 people have come in, society has to be formed. And within the next 4 months to 6 months, he is expected to convey this property. Of course, now the RERA will bring in different laws, but for the prevailing moment, you can take that this is the rule. So conveyance has to be done, and therefore, when the society is formed and the charge is being handed over, there will be bigger list of documents that the society then would be expected to take from the builder. But so far as his flat is concerned, he could limit himself to these documents.
Right. So those are very important things, and remember that you need to get the conveyance done, because otherwise what happens is you do own the house that you live in. However, your society, your building does not own the land on which the building has been made, which means in future, if there is any benefit that the society can get from FSI or TDR increase in that particular property, it will not accrue to the society. In fact, it will accrue to the developer, which is why it's very essential that you get ownership of the land, that you get the land conveyed in the name of the society. Moving on, we have Sam Modi. He's dialed in from Mumbai. Sam, what's your query?
Hello, Kavita. My question is, during redevelopment, can we request the builder, who is also our landlord, to split the square feet area to achieve 2 flats at the MOU stage itself? And whether we have to take a MADA or municipal special permissions.
Okay. This refers to your building, I assume, Sam. So could you tell us what category of buildings does it fall into?
It is a tenanted building.
Oh,
tenanted.
There is a landlord. And now we have finalized on the square feet. So I want to ask whether the square feet can be split, to make 2 flats out of 1, and whether any MADA or municipal permissions are required.
So he essentially wants the same area, however, he wants 2 flats instead of one constructed. Is that possible?
So as I understand, it's a tenanted building. So you're governed by the MHADA rules as well as the BMC. So here in your case, it will not be permitted to be split into 2 flats. Ordinarily, in case of a society, it could have been possible because they are the owners of the building and the land, and therefore it is permitted to be commanded onto the developer. However, in your case, the scheme of development is a different scheme. Per se, in these kind of schemes, the tenants have to be certified, and tenant can be certified only as a single tenant, and the benefit is to be given to that single tenant. Therefore, in all probabilities, converting that one tenancy into 2 separate flats will be difficult, and it is not within the purview of the rules and the regulations that are framed by the MHADA. So in that case, I would say that it would be, in my view, it is difficult for you to claim 2 flats, although you are wanting the same area that is being allotted by the landlord.
So it's just not possible is what you're saying?
Yeah, in my view, it is not possible. The rules don't provide for the same.
Right, Sam? So you will have to be happy with the one flat that you're going to get.
I just one point.
Yeah.
Because we are going to use it as one family only. Because of the 2 children, I want 2 separate flats.
No, what happens, see, this is your internal arrangement. Maybe later, once the building is ready with OC and all, you could try to put up the plans and get it split officially. So far as the redevelopment is concerned, for them, for the statutory authority, it will be a single tenancy to be sanctioned a single flat. So in the event you go for 2 separate split, it will look as if there were 2 separate tenancies, and therefore it can create a situation. And as such, the prevailing rules don't provide for a such splitting.
In future, after he gets possession of this new flat, then he can go ahead and split it into 2.
No, provided he
Once
can get the
plans are
plan
passed.
sanctioned. Subject to plans being sanctioned by the local corporation or the society, and society granting NOC to him.
Okay, so once that happens, he doesn't need to go to MHADA again, right? At that stage.
Yeah, he wouldn't be required, because then I'm presuming that the society will be conveyed with the land and the building. So it will be society and the competent authority will be sanctioning the plans. But today, so far as this whole process is concerned, it entails MHADA and certification of tenancy. And in that case, such splitting of tenancies are not permitted.
So Sam, what you could do, in fact, is, sound out your landlord and keep him in the loop that this is what you would probably, this is what you would like to do once you get possession of the flat, so that you at least have somebody on your side, and then try and get those plans passed by the civic body. But yes, immediately you're not going to get 2 flats. So it is a long wait over there, but you can do it once you get possession of this new flat. Abhinav has dialed in from Bengaluru. Abhinav, how can we help you?
Yeah, hi. I have a problem about my interior designer who had, left me on the shoreline. So I'll just put my problem in 3 equal points so that you'll understand it quickly. So the interior designer had promised on June 25th as the deadline to give the completed work. But there has been a delay of 2 months. That's the first point. And 2 months have been staying at a rented place, and the rent cost is about 41,000 in total. And the second point is the quality has taken a toll completely. What he has promised and what he has delivered, the finishing, the quality of glass he has used, and everything else has been cost-cutted. Okay, and the third point happens to be extensive damage to the other parts of the apartment, the flat. So there are floor damages, there are kitchen sink damages, and all those things which we already reminded him. So there has been an extensive cost that is incurred on me so far. So I had paid about 2 lakh so far to him, and the total agreement is 3 lakh rupees. So I have held 1 lakh rupee with me. But if you see, the losses on my side happen to be about 1,35,000 so far. And the agreement is there, yes, but everything else is in the air. June 25th it will finish and all that. The dates are in the air itself. They are not on a particular agreement.
So Abhinav, what does your agreement say? What does it have?
The agreement it just says the quote for the entire woodwork is, and nothing else. No delivery dates, no nothing.
Okay.
That's every homeowner's worst nightmare. What can he do?
See, now, of course, so far as this particular issue is concerned, now it's a question of a civil dispute between you and your interior decorator. Of course, whatever contents that you can gather from your contract, that will be beneficial for you to put a claim on him. What you rather call it's a counter claim, which will include the claim for damages. Now, what is required by you is you will have to build up your case on a notice that should be addressed to him, and you will have to prove the whole damage that he has caused to you. and thereafter, in case you are able to show cause to him and he doesn't volunteer to make good the loss, then you will have to go to the civil court for claiming damages against your interior decorator. Simultaneously, if there is a performance that you are expecting out of him for having paid certain amounts, and that some work which is supposed to be completed by him and has not been completed, then for that as well you could try to take performance, saying that he has been paid for those amounts and therefore he needs to now complete the work of the house. But that those are the only two remedies that are available to you. So what you can claim is damages for all the loss that he has caused to you, all for the inappropriate work or incorrect work that he has caused, or further damage that he has caused to your flats. So I think that would be the only claim that will be remaining insofar as that interior decorator is concerned.
You know, I have two questions here, Anshuman. Typically, a lot of people correspond over email before they actually sit down and sign a proper contract.
Correct.
Which I am hoping that Abhinav would have probably done in this case as
Yes.
well. So there, for all you know, there are designs that they have shared. There is probably a
Timelines
date
being
that
discussed.
he's committed to, etc.
Correct.
So will that stand in a court of law as evidence?
Exactly. In fact, those are the evidences that I meant by way of notices. So all the evidences that thereafter have been generated in the course of the work that he completed, those will now have to be used. So while he drafts a notice, he will have to rely on all the correspondences, emails that had been exchanged from time to time that can help him to prove that the commitments were there and there was an agreement to that effect. And therefore, he was required to complete a work by a particular date or in a particular manner.
And you've advised him to go to a civil court. Since here, in this case, this is a service that he's actually paying for. Can he also approach the consumer
as
forum?
well. Yeah, consumer as well. I'm sorry. He could also go to the consumer court along with the civil court. But of course, as I said, he will have to build up his case accordingly to ensure that he was a service provider. So whether he was an individual in that sense, but of course, interior decorator ordinarily would fall within the purview of the consumer court.
Right. And but he should hold back the remaining 1 lakh. He did mention that he's not made the complete payment.
Yeah, but now, of course, if there is a work which is incomplete, he'll have to take a call here. And so basically, if he's not paid the balance amount, I'm sure he will not be completing the work. So if you are in your property and the work is complete, good enough, you can withhold it. But if you are not in your flat and the money is withheld, then I'm sure you will have a situation as to how the balance work will be completed by the interior decorator. So you will have to evaluate the situation and take a call in this case.
So basically, Abhinav, it is how strong a case you can build with whatever whatever correspondence you've had with this person, with the interior designer in question. Use emails, use any brochures that he's given you, any drawings, any artwork that has been shared with you. Use all the receipts that have probably been given to you for the materials that were bought. Put all of this together, send a legal notice. You can approach the consumer forum or the civil court and file for damages. Mayuresh Chaudhary has dialed in from Thane. Mayuresh, how can we help you?
Yeah.
Tell us, Mayuresh.
Yeah, I want. My query was regarding that. I have a development agreement was there. Yeah. So.
Mayuresh, if your TV set is on, can you please mute it?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
The query is that I have a flat in Thane, Prime City, and there is a development agreement as a part of a share to my mother, and the builder has executed the development agreement with a clause in the agreement that all the transfer of the property, he will also do the registration of the flat along with that on my mother's name. But mother expired during that phase, and we have recently received the occupation certificate. My main question was like that, builder has given an allotment later on my father's name, and he has given all the requisite documents. The question is that he is not entertaining us for the allotment agreement, which is mentioned in the development agreement to be handed over. So what my query is the allotment agreement need to be registered with the concerned department? Is it required that if I am having a development agreement or registered stamp duty paid, and also I need to have a registered allotment agreement for my flat?
Fine. So basically here, what has happened is appears that your mother has expired pending the completion of the project. So the first question is, how does your father become entitled to? Because all the heirs of your mother would then be entitled to. However, therefore the question of succession laws will come in picture. But pending that, assuming that for the moment your father is entitled after your mother's death, in my view, you will be required to have a document that is registered and stamped, which will now earmark the flat that was now allotted. In your development agreement, there would be no details that are referred to, because what happens is that is initiated at that is executed at a very preliminary stage where the plans would not have been final. Thereafter, when the construction was initiated, there would have been allotment of a flat in your mother's favor, and therefore to ensure that that allotment is now registered in the favor of your mother or subsequently in your father's name, that document by which he is allotting that flat to you needs to be registered as well. In my view, stamp duty, although would be very nominal, therefore the builder should not have really a concern in registering the same, because generally the concern is that it will attract stamp duty again. But the fact that the development agreement previously has been registered and stamped, it is just an allotment under the development agreement, so there is no question of any stamp duty as well.
But like he says, if the developer is saying he said the developer is not entertaining us, which means
Correct.
the developer is probably not even willing to meet them. In this case.
Yes.
So if this is the case, what can he do now?
Now
How
this
can he
is a
ensure that he
concern
gets
of,
allotment of
yeah,
the
it's
flat?
an issue of performance now, that he is not performing his obligation under the contract, and therefore again now he will have to either issue him a notice and then go to the court stating that you please execute the agreement in my favor. Also, one important aspect is now that the OCS come, I'm expecting them to be in possession of their flats, which is most important for the moment to secure their rights in pursuance of the development agreement. So if they are in possession, then they very could pursue it with the developer and ensure that this particular document is executed and duly registered. Allotment letter seems to be in place, so that is a safeguard to that effect. However, it is as per the procedure, it needs to be registered and stamped.
So you have to register and stamp that allotment letter, and if the developer is creating issues, then like Anshuman said, you will probably have to take legal action over there. But yeah, if you are being offered possession, do take possession of the flat. Let's take an email query next. Ashok Sharda wants to know, within how much time should the managing committee of a society send AGM and SGM minutes to all the members? If this is not done, what punitive action can be initiated, by which authority can that be done? And if the action is repeated for many years by the managing committee members, can they be taken to task by any concerned authority, and under which bylaws? He doesn't tell us which city or state he belongs to, but I don't think that should be too much of a problem, right?
Of course not, but of course every state would have its own rules. Assuming that if it is in the state of Maharashtra, the ordinary period is about 3 months, within which after the meeting they have to circulate, and thereafter within 15 days they have to call for objections from the members to the minutes, if any. After that is done, actually the minutes can stand finalized. Now if the committee is not following the rule, complaint can be lodged to the registrar. Registrar can of course within a stipulated period of 60 days call upon them to regularize the whole thing. In case of a repeated repetition of such thing, always a claim for mismanagement can be done before the society, before the competent authority, and claim can be made for what you call the dissolution of this society and appointment of an administrator for the inaction of the members or mismanagement by the committee members of the society. So that is a standard practice. So therefore, the recourse in case of a repetition is to complain and ensure that an administrator is appointed before the registrar of cooperative housing societies.
So that's the answer there. Approach the registrar of cooperative housing societies and register a formal complaint. SK Mitra, right? SK Mitra has called in. How can we help you, Mr. Mitra?
Yeah, good evening. SK Mitra here from Bangalore.
Good evening.
My question is that I have bought a plot of land in a plotted development in a gated community in Bangalore,
Okay.
which has been sold to me and registered in 2007 with the development agreement of the tar roads, and the sanitary connection, water connection, etc. to be done. But the developer till date has been evading, and he has only done half-hearted things. He has not done tar road. He has not provided water or any connection at all. Actually, he has left the project in a very abandoned, appalling condition. So we have been trying, a few of us have got together, we've been trying to seek an appointment from him, trying to, get hold of him. He has seen us once or twice. Now he's evading. He's saying that since nobody is building any house anywhere nearby, so I will not, I will do it later. I will do it. But he's not doing anything. It is now 7 years since, we registered the plot and got the khata. We've been paying corporation tax, municipal tax regularly. What can we do to, get some relief from this developer?
So he was contracted only to give them roads and sanitary connections and the necessary utility connections, but has not even delivered even that bare
infrastructure
minimum
that was required for the purpose of. So of course, unfortunate that it has not been done. You'll have to really look into your contract if that was obligation under him to provide for the same, and if not, then of course what remedy remains now is approaching the court to ensure that you seek a specific performance of all the obligations that were recorded in the agreement. Nevertheless, you can also ensure that you pull out documents from the competent authority, seeing exactly what has gone wrong, whether there is any violation of law that he has undertaken because of which he is not able to take things forward, because that was a situation that a lot of builders did face. They undertook certain illegal activities, modification of plans, and that resulted in a permanent situation of which could not be undone. So you have to ensure that that is also the case. So you can do two things. Of course, approaching the court is the only remedy, but you have to also do your homework to ensure that what really has gone wrong, that whether it is just his financial inability or there is genuine breach of law that he has undertaken because of which he is not able to take things forward. Because remedy for both would be different and may not be the same. So if there is a breach of law, there may not be a remedy that may lie, and therefore you may have to book him under other provisions of law. But if it is simple inaction due to financial inability,
how do they really check this? Do they RTI this? Or
yeah, they can under an RTI pull out all the documents pertaining to the project and see exactly what has gone wrong. Is it only the lack of financial ability that is refraining him from completing the commitments that he has made under the project? Because the sanitation and all are infrastructure work, I wouldn't really say that there would be so much of an investment in that sense. So if he's still not able to complete that, it looks something beyond that as well.
Another thing that Mr. Mitra also said is that the developers telling them that nobody's really constructed anything over there. Nobody's constructed homes over there. So I'll take my time and deliver it.
No, it would be the other way, because he is not given the infrastructure, homes are not being constructed. In fact, the infrastructure has to come first. There should be sanitation lines laid, there would be electricity provisions to be made. And once those are done, then actually people can start building up houses and getting connections, because those have to reach prior in time. So infrastructure would be expected to reach first, and then people would be developing their plots. Because this seemed to be a situation where the construction was not his obligation. It was only that infrastructure provision was the obligation of the developer.
Mr. Mitra, there is another route that you could probably try, and this is on the basis of a news story that we had run on this channel, where the home buyer used RTI to put so much pressure on the developer that he had to eventually turn around and settle and refund him all the money for a flat that was delayed. You all could probably do the same. Send off RTI applications to the banks that finance the project. Send it to all the civic body, to all the government bodies that gave the clearances for the project. All of this could build enough pressure on the developer, and for all you know, he might just turn around and finish off whatever little infrastructure development he has to do for that particular project. So that is also probably something that you all could look at simultaneously while you all wait for the response from these RTI applications. Website query next, Dev says that he has booked a 4 BHK flat. Now Dev says that this is his first property purchase. His wife is a homemaker. He will be making all the payments. Should he register the property in both his and his wife's or in his name alone? Also, should he take the home loan in his name alone? Does this make any difference in case we are planning future property purchases? That's a very interesting question over there.
Yeah, so far as property purchase is concerned, that urban land ceiling has now gone. So it doesn't really matter whether in whose name you are buying, because there was a limit of urban property that you could hold previously. So this question no more remains a concern. So of course you can buy as many number of properties that you want. Of course there could be an element of tax planning to that, but of course you can consult a CA to that effect. Now so far as housing loan is concerned, if you are taking the housing loan, you will be expected to have the name in the document. So you will have to purchase it in your name, only then the housing loan can be given to you. So that itself answers the first question, that okay, whether you need to have your name in the agreement or not. So of course you will have to have it, because otherwise you can't apply for the housing loan. Assuming for a moment that you would be self-financing this particular flat, then whether you would require your wife's name or your name, it depends. If it is a matter of convenience, and so it's always better to have two names, because in case of death of the other, there is a name to take care of. In law, it is always said that the one who has contributed consideration is the owner. So even if there are two names, and if there was a sole contributor to the purchase of flat, the second name is ordinarily taken as a convenience. So there would be multiple factors that would determine the ownership. So you will have to really plan as to what is your end intent of this particular flat that you are buying, and based on that you can take a call. But there are multiple factors that will in fact determine how you should be buying this particular property.
So essentially, Dev, that's a choice that you have to make. That's a decision that you and your wife have to jointly make. However, and Anshuman, this is going to be my next question to you, which you've already answered in a way. And the fact is this, that a lady lawyer who had come in for one of her shows once told us that as women, it is essential to get your name as well on that property, especially if there is property that you are buying with your husband. It makes sense for both the husband and wife to have their names on that property, which which also takes care of the women's needs in case
there's a divorce.
There's a divorce, or in case there's a death. In both cases, it does help the woman concerned.
Though I would differ here in the sense that divorce courts also have held that in the event wife's name was just included as a convenience and she has not really contributed, then essentially the property would belong to husband. Though subsequently in case of separation, whatever the laws may have been.
Right, so that's a decision that you have to take, Dev. That's it on today's episode of Property Hotline. Anshuman, thank you very much for coming in. If you have any questions related to real estate, do get in touch with us. We'll get the country's top experts to answer each and every one of them. ID is flashing on your screen. Send in your questions, get them answered. Thank you very much for tuning in.
You can watch live TV on our website mpnow.in. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/magicbricksnow. And don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at magicbricksnow. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/magicbricksnow.